What's up, witches, wizards, humans, and lizards? I'm Sarah.
I'm JJ.
And I'm Time.
And you are clocking in for The Witching Hour, a podcast where we have a lot of opinions and we aren't afraid to share them. Today, we're starting with some hot takes about book reviews before we get into the meat of the episode. My review of the Gothic classic, Dracula. So grab your elixir of choice and settle in. We've got a lot to share.
Not the meat.
Yeah, I did that on purpose.
The meat.
All right, so the hot take that I want to talk about today has nothing to do with the rest of the episode. I just want to talk about it. Should authors read reviews of their own book?
Yes.
Yeah.
But they're not for the author, they're for the readers.
I agree. So
I disagree.
I feel like they are for the reader, but I feel like the author does need to have a good understanding of the reader space. The author should not be bitching at people, calling people names, responding. Like, they should not necessarily be interacting in that review space. But I do think that it is a good idea to read the reviews so you can, because sometimes readers are going to pick up on things that you think you conveyed very clearly that maybe you didn't. And if you're writing a series, that can give you kind of jumping off points moving forward. So I think you should read reviews. You should not interact with them.
I agree. But I also do think reviews are just as much for the author as they are for the reader. I think they're for everyone involved. That's everything else you said I agree with wholeheartedly. I think it's really weird to me if an author were to interact in any way with reviews directly. If they want to post the good ones, that's obviously fine. That's marketing. But beyond that, mind your business.
Yeah, you shouldn't be going on Goodreads and liking the reviews that you agree with.
That's nasty to me. But they absolutely should be reading them, as many as they can find, especially the bad ones.
Okay, so I wholeheartedly disagree with that. I have left reviews on books that I would never want the author to see. But I left them there to remind myself of what I thought of the book and, for example, why I may not want to come back to it. I have left reviews, or I've seen reviews with like trigger warnings or saying like, hey, the author doesn't mention this in the book, but this is really important for you, future reader, to know. And if the author didn't do that, that's kind of, I don't know, kind of rude. I guess that's where reading reviews could come in handy, because then they could redo the book. But that's the thing. If the book has already been published, the reviews are not going to affect the text of that book. I think they should not affect the text of that book. An author should not go back and try and rewrite their book based on reviews.
I agree. But I also think that when you read them, they help you become a better writer if you apply them correctly. If you're just a one and done, you write a book and then you call it a day, never pick up a pen again, then don't read the reviews. You don't need to. But if you're going to keep writing, you should get feedback for your writing.
But is that not the duty of your team, your editors, your whoever, your beta readers? Like people who you have specifically asked and solicited feedback?
Those people, a lot of times, hope in a perfect world, yes. In the world we live in, a lot of times those people might be a little scared of confrontation and maybe shouldn't be beta readers, but they're there anyway. So they might tell you what you want to hear. Or everyone might be too close to it. Some random who found the book in Barnes & Noble does not know you, does not care what you think about them. They're going to tell you the truth. And that might be what you need to see. I obviously, if this is my thing, if it doesn't serve you, ignore it. But if it does help, then that's great. It's free feedback.
Yeah, I will say I subscribe to, I guess, the idea that if I'm going to say it, yeah, I know, it's free. And it's, if you are going to say it behind their back, you should be able to say it to their face. And so that's also how I treat book reviews. Like, even if I'm being really harsh, I'm doing it knowing full well that the author may come across it. And so I do try to be constructive in the way that I leave bad reviews or negative reviews. But I do feel like if you put your work out there, you should get an idea of it. Like in when you're doing a play performance, like professionally, immediately you want to know about the reviews and the reception and everything, like as an actor. And that is a little different because you can change your performance going forward. I don't think you should change the book because that's just going
Right.
to be a never-ending cycle of trying to please people.
Yes.
Whereas you can take that and let it affect, to your benefit, hopefully, how you perform moving forward with your writing.
Yeah, that's what I'm feeling.
I think that someone else should be the one to collect the reviews for you and sift through and find the important information, because some people are just mean. And also,
Yeah.
again, I don't think that if you're leaving a review on a book, you should expect the author to potentially see it, because it's not for them. I leave reviews for me. I leave reviews for my friends to have a little giggle on Goodreads. Like, they're not for the author. I don't want the author to be poking around. Like, I think that someone else should be going through that, and they can be like, okay, this rando has opinions on, like, I read a book recently that had just so many typos. So in my review, I put, this needed another round of editing. I would not say that to the author. I would say that to the author's, like, manager, and then be like, come up with a nicer way to say that to your client. Because, like, it's not my job to protect the author's feelings. It is their team. It's their team's job to protect the author's feelings and help them grow as an author.
But it's interesting that you've said what you've just said, because I am very different in that when I write a review, I'm writing it for the author specifically. And I'm writing in a way where it's accessible to other readers or prospective readers, but it's for the person who wrote the book.
But now I'm questioning my understanding of reviews. Aren't we all? I thought we were all just writing them for the author. And I'm like, not being dramatic.
I did too,
that's what I thought.
Because this is the thing, like, reviews help other customers or clients or whatever figure out if they want this or not, but they're also feedback.
I guess I write bad reviews for other readers, and I write good reviews for the author.
I don't write good reviews. That's my hot take. Because if I really liked a book, I had a really good time. I'm not even thinking about, I only think about needing to write a review if something was abhorrent.
See, but that's crazy because the book's already written.
Right. But
well, so why would you be like, this was done really poorly? Would you leave a bad review on, like, a Jane Austen novel because she's not writing anymore?
People do.
I would. I would tear her to shreds and hope her ghost read it.
No. You leave a bad review so that other people who might pick up a Jane Austen book will see it and be like, oh, actually, my little feminist self does not want to interact.
Right.
But, like,
and that's why I said it's for the author and the reader.
Okay.
The scope in which you write it is the scope in which you write it. You write your reviews for the readers. I write mine for the author. At the end of the day, both of our reviews could be read by everyone. So the scope at the end of the day doesn't really matter, because someone's going to read it, and that someone might be the author, whether you want them to or not. Or for me, it might be a reader who I don't care about. I mean, that's just
the
the nature of
not
online.
Who do you write your reviews for? The question is, should authors read reviews?
And I think they should, because I put good shit in there. Pay attention to me. I slay.
I think... I mean, yeah, I think so. But I also think now I'm going to have to reevaluate, because I genuinely thought, like, we're all out here writing reviews. So, like to the author, basically.
Right. I think of it as like a
so
comment,
I'm like, yeah, you should read it
on AO3 is how I'm thinking of it.
Yes. Okay, that's a good, yeah. And maybe that's why, because I did leave so many reviews and feedback on fan fiction, that it's kind of just transferred over into how I write a review, and, like, the audience that I have in my mind is the writer.
No, because, see, I used to leave comments on fics, and people would get mad at me because they'd be like, why are you correcting my grammar? This is fan fiction. Or, like, why do you have such an issue with X, Y, and Z? This is how I wanted to write it. Like, I was, like, getting into fights in the comments. So I'm like, okay, I never want to talk to another author again. My comments are no longer for you.
And now look where you work.
Well, yeah, but people are paying me for my opinions now, so it's a little bit different.
Right.
But I think that's a perfectly good example too. Like, in fan fiction, it's a little bit different, right? Because you can respond to a review more accessibly, I guess, than, like, if you've got 5,000 reviews. Yeah.
But authors do respond to reviews on social media.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. They shouldn't. In fan fiction and published whatever, they shouldn't be openly responding to them. They should probably be talking with their team about, like, hey, I saw these things. How can I improve? How can we improve? And not, like, putting people on blast.
Similarly, for like fan fiction authors who often work alone, you can leave a little comment saying, oh my gosh, thank you so much for the positive review, or thank you for bringing that to my attention, I'll look into it for a negative review. If you feel the need to interact with it. I don't understand the need to interact with criticism ever, like verbally. It just doesn't make sense to me. That's not what it's there for. Like, if I'm criticizing someone, I don't want you to talk back to me about it. Like in theater, if you get notes from your director, you don't say, well, no, you look like an asshole. Stop that.
Well, that's so interesting because I feel like by leaving the review for the author to read, you're opening a dialogue, but you're not. You're just like dropping a letter on their doorstep and running away.
Yes.
Yeah, no return address.
Yeah. That's crazy to me because, like, I think that if you're going to write something and be like, yeah, this is for you, no, I don't want to hear what you think about it. Is that not what the author did by writing their book? By saying, here's this book, I don't want to hear what you think about it. And then you're like, well, here's my unsolicited feedback. I don't want to know what you think about it.
Well, no,
like,
they didn't do that because they published a book in a market knowing that reviews are an important part of said market.
But if you're publishing your review publicly, is it not the same thing?
Right, but it's not acceptable. It's not what we know to happen for an author to respond to your review. It is acceptable and understood that if you publish something, like a book, it's going to be reviewed. It doesn't work the other way. It's one-sided communication.
Not these days, it's not. Unless I've only been following really badly behaved authors, yeah.
In best practice, it is one-sided communication on both sides.
I will say very vaguely, whatever you want to call it, I used to be friends with an author on social media. I forgot I was friends with that author on social media, and I posted a criticism of them, which totally would have told them. But they then unfriended me on social media because they didn't like my feedback on their writing. So like that's where it gets a little too like
but that's also
personal,
different.
You know?
That's also different to me because that wasn't a review posted in a forum for reviews like Goodreads or whatever. Okay. That was if I'm an author, right, and I'm published and I'm just on Twitter or someone I'm following post something, well then I do have a right to interact with that because that is the social expectation in that space. It sucks that you didn't know that and whatever, but like you said, you would have said it anyway. Yeah. It's just is unfortunate circumstance. But that, to me, that is a perfectly reasonable thing to do. Instead of responding to you or maybe defending themselves, they were like, cool, I'm out. Like, which is fine.
Yeah.
That's
but I mean,
fine.
I mean,
that's a normal thing to do.
I think that is acceptable in terms of like their reaction to, because it could have they could have like put me on blast or, you know, whatever. But I do think even in that regard, like sometimes you should just ignore it. Just keep scrolling. I mean, I didn't really want to be friends with her anyway, so I don't know why I'm a little butthurt by it. I mean, her or him, with them, with the individual, with the author. I'll tell you who it was later.
Thank you so much. Anyway, yeah, you know my opinions now. I didn't know I had opinions on this until I just spoke for 30 minutes about it.
That's what these hot takes are here for.
Wow.
Yeah. As an author, I want someone to protect me, especially because...
Well, I do think that's the best case scenario. I didn't get to say that because I forgot.
Yeah.
I do think the best case scenario is the author does not read them. They are collected by someone on the team and presented to them. However, that might not always be the case. Like, if you're
self-published.
If you're self-published, or even if you're vanity published, you probably might not get that. So in those cases, those authors should be reading them. If you're traditionally published, or if you're with Spellbound Publishing House LLC, you would get that. So it's different.
Sorry, who was that again? I didn't get the name of it.
Oh, you mean Spellbound Publishing House LLC?
Oh, aren't they a hybrid that knows what they're doing?
They are a hybrid that knows what they're doing. I'm a big fan.
Awesome. Yeah, cool. Thanks for that recommendation.
And this episode is sponsored by...
This episode and every episode is sponsored by Spellbound Publishing House. Alrighty, let's talk about this book. I was going to say the book of the week, but it's not, because we don't do a book every week. Let's talk about Dracula. Because that's the book we're talking about today. Who hasn't heard of Dracula? Do I need to do an introduction? The book is called Dracula. It's by Bram Stoker, published in 1897. Don't you raise your hands. You've heard of it. don't pretend.
Well, you don't know.
All right, I guess I can start with the summary. It's quite long because I was not really sure what to cut out because I feel like a lot happens in this book. It's not that long. It's about 500 pages, I think, but
Not that long. What do you mean?
It's not
Not
that
that
long.
long.
Average for a classic?
In my personal opinion,
but
it's not that long.
I just want to say, not that long is like 200 pages.
Okay, all right, that's fair. That's fair. I just feel like a
500
lot
pages
happens.
is the length of a decent fantasy novel.
That's
Like
a ream of
500.
paper.
Yeah.
Sure is.
Okay, fine. It's a long book. Are you happy?
I am.
It's a long book and a lot happens. So let's get into it. All right. Jonathan Harker, a solicitor, visits Count Dracula to assist him with purchasing a house. Despite warnings from the Count, Harker starts to explore the Count's castle at night, where he encounters 3 vampire women. Dracula saves him from the women, but later abandons him after Harker has been poking around the house. He is left alone with these vampire women, but escapes, ending up in a Budapest hospital. Dracula, meanwhile, travels to England on the Demeter, a ship that is carrying Earth from his castle. This will be important later. Remember that. This part of the story is told through the ship's log. The crew on the ship starts disappearing one by one, leaving only the captain. And when the ship runs aground at a city, I guess a town called Whitby, there's a newspaper article about a large dog-like creature scampering off the ship. The next section introduces the main female characters of the book, Lucy Westenra and Mina Murray, soon to be Mina Harker, who is Jonathan Harker's fiance. Lucy has received... Oh, those 2 ladies are best friends, by the way. Lucy has received marriage proposals from 3 different men, a Dr. John Seward, Quincy Morris, who is a cowboy, and Arthur Holmwood. She accepts the proposal from Arthur Holmwood, and he is now her fiance, but the 3 men are friends and continue to hang out for the rest of the book, which I find enchanting. So, Mina joins her friend Lucy on a trip to Whitby, which you may recall is where Dracula's ship has just arrived. Lucy begins sleepwalking and is stalked by Dracula. Mina receives a letter about her fiancé's illness and goes to Budapest to take care of him. Meanwhile, Lucy becomes ill. Professor Van Helsing diagnoses her with acute blood loss and suspects vampirism. He is the vampire expert. He knows a lot about these guys for some reason. Despite him warning her and placing garlic in her room to ward away the vampires, Lucy dies and is later confirmed to be a vampire. She starts stalking the town at night, and several children report seeing her. She is then killed by the group of Van Helsing, the vampire hunter, and all 3 of her suitors. Again, hilarious that these guys are all just like hanging out now. Jonathan Harker and Mina return from Budapest. Harker's okay now, and they join the fight against Dracula. At the asylum, which is owned by Dr. Seward, one of the suitors, the men begin to hunt Dracula. Whoa, hello? Dracula.
Dracula.
Dracula uses one of the patients in the asylum, named Renfield, to break in and attack Mina. He drinks her blood and forces her to also drink his blood, which curses her to become a vampire after she dies. Meanwhile, the men are searching Dracula's various properties because he owns a bunch of houses in town and attempt to trap him in one of his cases, which has the dirt from his home, but he escapes. Mina is now psychically connected with Dracula because she drank his blood, and she uses that connection to help guide the men, and they follow Dracula back to Transylvania. Fun fact, this is actually where I stopped reading the book. I never finished it. So...
Do go on.
So this is all new information to me. Back in Eastern Europe, the hunters split up. Van Helsing and Mina go to Dracula's castle, where the professor destroys the vampire women. The others follow Dracula as he travels down a river. While his box is being moved, the hunters attack it. So his box, again, has his ancestral dirt in it, and he has to stay with it. Harker cuts Dracula's head off, and Quincy stabs him in the heart. Dracula crumbles to dust, freeing Mina from her vampiric curse. Quincy the cowboy has been mortally wounded in the fight and dies from his wounds, but he is at peace knowing that Mina has been saved. And a note by Jonathan Harker 7 years later states that they have a son who they named Quincy. So, that's the book.
Can I say something?
Please.
I've never read the book, nor have I attempted to, nor have I seen the film. With that being said, it is on my shelf. I did buy a fancy copy of it. I also bought Frankenstein because same thing. I've never read it, nor have I watched the film.
I also have not read Frankenstein, but it is also on my shelf.
We gotta get reading these books.
We do.
You do. You really do.
I just wanted to state that for the record.
Well, so how much of what I just said was familiar to you?
So I will say about 45%, and the only reason is because I have a communication degree.
Okay.
Vampirism is like very prevalent in a lot of stuff, so I had to like study Dracula for a moment.
But you didn't
I
read
did
it.
not read it. No.
Okay.
Okay, so I have read it before. Not recently. I think I was at like freshman in college. So I just had two huge revelations. Which is, first of all, Van Helsing. Like,
Yeah.
I've read it, I've seen it, I've watched Van Helsing, but never put that together.
Right.
Oh.
And then I freaking love the symbolism of the ship being called the Demeter because she oversees the cycle of life and death and the earth and the harvest. And so like the fact that she's like carrying the ship is carrying the earth from one place to another that like influences his cycle of life and death.
Yeah,
Bram
that's really
Stoker.
beautiful, quite frankly.
You know what's up, man.
I didn't think about that either. I did catch the Van Helsing thing, though.
Yeah. I can't believe
so
I'm like realizing that right now.
that is
I
also
had no idea.
Well, we're gonna get into it, but this book is the reason for pretty much all of the vampire tropes in modern culture.
So which of them sparkles?
None of them. That was Stephanie Meyer, and she is not a part of this. One thing that I do want to mention about Dracula that I think is really cool is that it's an epistolary novel. So it's told through letters, newspaper articles, and diary entries, and each one is dated. So this is actually how Dracula kind of came into my life, because during COVID, someone started Dracula Daily. So on the date that the letters were sent or the diary entries were written, they would email you that section of the story. So you would read it in real time. And I found out about it and I was like, oh, this is so cool. And I checked where they were in the story and there was literally one entry left. So I was like, okay, maybe I'll just read it on my own. So I did. And I was actually listening to the audiobook for several months because I kept falling asleep. That's because I listen to audiobooks to go to sleep. Right now I'm listening to Game of Thrones because I'm very suggestible and we talked about it in a previous episode. But yeah, I was listening to the audiobook of Dracula and then I found out that I had a copy of it, which I didn't know, but I do. So I switched to the physical copy and then never finished it because I'm a terrible person. But it's a very
Just
cool book.
God awful.
Yeah. I mean, who gets 2/3 of the way through a book and then is like, the most exciting part is all that's left? I'm good. I don't need to finish this.
Yeah, I've had enough, actually.
Yeah.
You know what? Kudos to you, because it would be haunting me that I don't know what's happening in that last third.
Also, speaking of that last third, I did not know any of the plot of Dracula at all. Zero of the plot I knew until just now.
Yeah. Well, it's
Insane.
wild. Like
why is it
truly,
Mamma Mia, but like cursed?
No, seriously.
Oh my god.
And the fact that,
Yeah.
like, Lucy turns into a vampire and then dies, and then her fiance, I believe, is the one who, like, stakes her through the heart and kills her. Like, that's haunting.
That's haunting.
Yes. Yeah.
Bram Stoker's a woman who wrote this, right?
No,
This was ghostwritten by a woman?
perhaps.
It has to be. It has to be.
The ghostwriter
Well, so that-
was Lucy.
Yeah.
Correct.
That is one of the things that I wanted to talk about. The themes of gender and sexuality are very prevalent in this book. The primary threat of Dracula is that he will, quote, seduce, penetrate, and drain another male. And Harker's excitement about being, quote, penetrated and drained by the vampire women could imply homosexual desire. Or his submission to the women also inverts traditional Victorian gender roles where the woman is usually submissive and the man is more aggressive.
This is so true, obviously. But I really love this because Dracula and the film Nosferatu are both very responsible for people being able to tell queer stories before it was cool or acceptable. In like the 80s and 90s, they did a lot of like what?
Sorry, I really thought you were going to say that the film Nosferatu was your sexual awakening, and I was going to have to judge
And it was because I looked at that tall, lanky creature, and I said, "You're mine, you're mine." I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
Times
No one clipped
Daddy.
that. No one clipped that. I swear to God. I'll know where you are. I know where you live. No, but like in the 70s, 80s, 90s, when it was really unacceptable to really have queer stories being told, they just put a vampire in it. The Lost Boys? That's gay. That's gay. There's so many examples of which I can remember. None of them. Interview with a Vampire. Gay.
So gay.
Super gay.
So
I'm reading the
super
book
gay.
right now. Oh my God, it's gay.
Yeah.
And the way, like, in that book, too, I haven't seen the movie because I'm waiting until I finish the book, but in that
As a
book...
responsible human being does.
Right. In that
Yes.
book, the way Louis talks about being turned into a vampire from Lestat is... It's pornographic.
Uh-huh.
Like, it's the most intimate you can be with another living thing, or dead thing, I guess. And that stems back to Dracula and Nosferatu. Like,
Yeah.
that's just, it's so cool to me. It's such an important piece of queer history, even though it wasn't intended to be that way, I don't think. It may have been, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't really know. One of the other things that I was going to talk about later was the theme of disease in the book as well.
Mm-hmm.
Vampirism could be a metaphor for STDs, and in fact, there is some evidence that Bram Stoker died as a result of syphilis,
Interesting.
and he may have even contracted it while writing Dracula.
It's like a parallel to what he's going through, but like creating a monster out of it. Like a
Yeah.
tangible monster. That's interesting.
That really checks out
Yeah.
with syphilis specifically, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Do I want
Because
to
like attacks your
have you-
brain.
elaborate on that?
Well, because of the way it affects your personality and your behavior.
Okay.
You get a little crazy.
Okay.
Yeah, it
I'm
like
really happy that I...
deteriorates your brain tissue.
Okay, yeah, I'm glad that I didn't know that until just now. So, thank you for the education. Yeah, so to go back to the gender thing real quick, Mina and Lucy are really interesting depictions of women in the Victorian era. Lucy specifically says, because she has 3 suitors, 3 people who proposed marriage to her, and she's like, well, if a woman has 3 suitors, why can she not have 3 husbands? Which is crazy. Like, Victorian women don't talk like that.
Yeah.
But she was all
I
for
love
it.
that.
She was
Yeah.
she was ready to just have her own little reverse harem moment.
She's got more
And she deserved
agency.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and then that's even more wild that like she's like, well, all 3 of them want me, so why can't I have all 3 of them? And then they turn around and like
And
kill
they
her.
killed her. Yeah.
Well, so of
Yeah.
the novel's 5 vampires, 4 are women. And they are all aggressive, driven by their thirst for blood, which arguably could be a parallel with sexual desire. And they are also all described as being erotic in their various settings,
Mhm.
which is also unusual. An unusual way to depict women as having that kind of sexual power in that time period.
It's definitely like interesting that dynamic and like giving them that sexual power, because at this time, usually if women were demonstrating any of these, they were considered to be like hysterical and like they needed to be institutionalized. So I do find it interesting that like they're embracing it, but then like Lucy is still killed essentially for what she is and who she is.
That is true.
Yes. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
So this book is sort of, and again, I don't know any of the intentions behind any of what's in this novel. What it's doing is acting as a cautionary tale. You don't want to be promiscuous. You don't want to want 3 husbands, because if you do, you're a monster and they're gonna kill you. You're not worth of
Ooh.
having life because you're so in tune with your sexual desires or whatever.
Yeah.
So that actually had me curious. I just Googled it. Bram Stoker was raised Protestant in the Church of Ireland. So that kind of does, like, that theory of it being like a cautionary tale to, like, fight off your feminine wiles. Like, that tracks.
Right. And when was this written?
1897.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cautionary tale.
That's so interesting because I feel like Mina is a really cool character. Like, I really like her because
Right.
she kind of takes fate into her own hands. Like, her husband is sick in Budapest, so she gets on a ship and heads over there to, like, go check on him. And, like, she goes by herself, I think. And then later she is with the men the whole time while they're hunting Dracula. Like, she goes with Van Helsing to the castle to destroy the other women. But maybe if we're looking at, like, the cautionary tale thing, maybe it's the example of, like, well, here's what a good woman looks like. She's loyal. She kills the
Right.
bad women. That's interesting.
And
She
maybe,
drops
too-
everything to be with her husband when he's sick.
Right. And also, we're looking at it from a 2024 perspective
Mhm.
of where we are now. Women like Lucy are considered powerful or free or in touch with themselves and their desires and their wants. It's not necessarily seen as a bad thing intrinsically anymore. Whereas in the late 1800s, it was very negative to be anything outside of perfect submissive woman.
It is interesting that the main character, Jonathan Harker, is such a submissive guy because his diary is the first, like, third of the book. And it's him arriving at the castle. It's him being like, man, this Dracula guy's pretty weird. And it's him getting seduced by 3 sexy vampire women. He just kind of, like, lets things happen to him. And he doesn't get punished for it. Does he? I don't know. I haven't read this in a long time either.
I wonder if, to keep going with this sort of allegory, I wonder if vampirism in this sense sort of just represents, like, the unsavory crowd, sort of like in The Lost Boys, where it's like Harker is like a regular upstanding guy, right, beforehand, and then he gets intertwined with vampirism and becomes less manly in the traditional sense of what is expected of men at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So what if it really is, like, and this very much so could have been, like, subconscious, right? Like, people of the time just thought this way. So I'm wondering if that's what it is. If vampirism here could represent STDs, but it could also just represent, like, the unsavory population.
Yeah. So that segues into the other point. I wasn't sure if I wanted to talk about the Judaism of it all, but I knew as soon as I said that, time was going to be like, yes, we have to talk about it. So,
Well, yes, I was, and I did see it on this little list, and I said, well, we're going to talk about that.
Yep. Imagine trying to
So-
skip it now.
I know, right? Like, actually, I changed my mind. We're done. Parallels have been drawn between Dracula and the immigration of Eastern European Jews into England due to anti-Semitic laws driving them out of where they were living. And Dracula literally turns people into the capital O other that he is. So it is the fear that it's coming from the fear of the Wikipedia said reverse colonization, which I thought was kind of funny because it's like, yeah, England is like, yeah. Basically
Yeah.
anyone who's not English coming in and being like, this is our land now. Like, this is like
Yeah.
infecting England. What I have in my notes, yes, fears about racial pollution, which I think is pretty much what you said. Like, Dracula turns people into the unsavory kind of person that he is, and that is the fear of living next door to someone who's different than you, is that somehow they're going to make you worse, even though that's not how anything works.
I mean, that also kind of goes along with, like, the like religious allegory and parallel even
Yeah.
up to today. Like if you're whatever religion and you're hanging out with somebody from a different religion, they might corrupt you. You're going
Right.
to be bad.
Well, and then there's a
But-
whole thing about like Dracula being afraid of crucifixes as well.
Yeah.
Like that definitely the religious allegory is intentional, I would wager.
But also, I mean, think of like what a crucifix has come to represent now, like outside of what it is like supposed to represent in Christianity. Like,
Yeah.
probably should be afraid of that
Yes. Yes,
because
exactly.
it represents hatred now. It doesn't represent grace and forgiveness like it's supposed to.
The interesting thing about crucifixes to me with vampires is I heard a theory, and I'm sure it's in a book somewhere, in some fictional text, that the reason why vampires are afraid of crucifixes isn't because of the religious symbolism, but because it looks like a stake.
That's
Like,
silly.
it's very easy to stab someone with a crucifix if it's large enough.
What if it's this? You can't see. I'm holding my fingers not that
What
far
if
apart.
it's this-
What if it's this big?
Yeah, guys, Sarah just said, what if it's this big and held up like a 4-foot long
No.
crucifix? If it
What
was
if
that
it's
big,
like-
it'd be easy. I don't
What if it's
understand.
Hold
like
it from
4
under her
inches
chair.
big? What if it's a necklace? You can't wear a
Right.
4
Like a
foot long
rosary?
necklace.
But also, were they wearing crucifix little tiny necklaces?
Yes,
then?
so that actually is a theme in the book, is the way, okay, cut this out of the summary because I thought it was too much to get into, but Dracula always has to have some of his earth from home with him. So when he
Like
comes
in a suit
over,
jacket?
no, so he literally has boxes full of dirt that he just brings with him everywhere. And like
I got a
read,
jar
like,
of dirt. I've got a jar of dirt.
no, literally, like that is how Dracula is able to travel. He just brings his boxes full of dirt with him and he puts them in his houses. So he has a bunch of properties in Whitby, which is the town in England that he goes to. And what the hunters do is they find all of his houses with all of the boxes of dirt in them, and they put the wafers with the sacramental wafers
Oh,
in
the
the
communion
boxes.
wafers.
The communion wafers, thank you. They put those in the boxes so that he can't return to them. So, like, by blessing his home dirt, he is now...
So it's
Like,
like
he
a
can't-
Christian
he can't-
crusade.
Yes.
Oh my God.
I'm sitting here a little surprised they didn't use holy water, but go off, I guess. Like, why'd you use a
Yeah.
cracker?
They might have also done that. I'm going to be honest, I don't remember. But in the summary that I read off Wikipedia today, they specifically mentioned the wafers. Which is also so funny that, like,
That is really funny
They
that
just-
you used a cracker to kill a vampire.
not to kill him, just to make it so he
Well-
can't come back home.
But, like, initially the goal was
Yeah.
Moida.
Yeah, they
It was
wanted
a
to
step
trap
in
him.
the process for sure.
Yeah. So they put the crackers in most of the boxes of dirt. They left one, so that way they would like know which house he would be in, so they could try and attack him there.
Oh, that's
You want to
smart.
know? Listen, you want to know something crazy about communion wafers?
Sure.
When I was in when I was in catechism, I got in trouble because we were supposed to like practice, you know,
Mhm.
and I said that Jesus tasted stale, and I got in trouble for it.
Yeah.
That's
You
good.
can't say that in the
That's really good.
church.
You
And
can't.
can I-
But I was 8. How did I know?
And can I say something? Can I
Mm.
say something crazy? I love how Jesus tastes. I love Jesus. Really good.
There is a very specific taste
Yes.
to
To Jesus.
Jesus. I'm so sorry. They're like to the wafers, you know, like a very
Yeah.
specific. Yeah.
Well, 'cause
Unless you go to a
here's the
bougie
thing.
church and then they're giving you pieces of French bread.
Love that. I really like the combined sort of texture flavor profile of Jesus's body with his blood. It works for me.
That is getting clipped for sure.
Yeah.
It works. for
That
me,
is,
it's
I can
fine.
see the promotional graphic now.
Please. We rent a billboard. I really like the
Flavor and texture profile.
Jesus' body with his blood.
My mother and my grandmother are going to listen to this, pray for me, and then call me and be like, hey,
Yeah, my mom's gonna
was
listen to
this
this and be
really
like, what do you mean
what
by
I
that?
heard?
No, haha, that's the audio messing up. Sorry.
It was a
Dracula
deepfake.
came in here and took it over.
Yeah. I want
Yeah.
to eat Jesus Christ. I don't know. Him digging through his dirt boxes looking for the crackers.
Oh my god.
Just shoving ancestral dirt into his face.
Oh my god. Yeah, so anyway, me the Jew sitting over here like the little like eyes and lips emoji, just like I don't know what you're talking about.
You talking
Sarah's
about
like-
Judaism and us walking in saying, yeah, the crackers.
Yeah, let's talk about Jesus crackers, actually.
Sarah's like, I've never eaten a Jesus cracker before.
You gotta
I
try
have
them,
actually.
they're
I've
great.
been to church a few times, but I
You
don't
can buy them
have.
off of Amazon. You can buy Jesus Christ on Amazon.
That's crazy. What a
Just so you
world.
know. Just thought people should know.
No, that is important
Crying.
information. Oh wow.
Can you get 2-day delivery?
No, it has to be
Make it 3,
day.
call it Easter.
Yeah.
Our
We're on the
brains
same
right now.
page.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh man.
Where were we?
Oh, we were talking about how Dracula's a little anti-Semitic.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, the Judaism of it all.
Yes, the Judaism of it all.
The Judaism of it all.
AKA the Protestantism of it all, because Bram Stoker did not like the Jews. Because nobody did. And it's fine. So Dracula has a number of associations with anti-Semitic conceptions about Jewish people, such as his appearance. He's got the nose and the nails, and actually I think in this book he has a fabulous mustache, which is kind of iconic and not very Jewish. But I do love that. That's unrelated. But his wealth and parasitic bloodlust are also some anti-Semitic stereotypes. They're just sprinkled in there for flavor. He also resembles other fictional Jews. For example, his long, sharp nails are like Fagin in Charles Dickens' Oliver Twist. Apologies if I said that wrong. I've never read it. And then Svengali of Georges du Maurier's Trilby, who is depicted as animalistic and thin, and that is also another Jewish character. And it sounds like both of those were also not very nice people, which, you know,
I'm sure they weren't.
don't,
I'm sure.
if the only Jewish character in your story is the villain, perhaps reconsider.
Well, and also, again, I don't know if I mentioned this on the pod. I feel like I have. I feel like we're about 6 episodes in, and I'm already repeating myself, but I don't actually know if that's true. But Dracula the book, like, was entirely ripped off for Nosferatu the movie. Like,
Correct.
Nosferatu is a closer retelling of the book than the Dracula movie is of the Dracula book. So, the depiction you're reading right now is Nosferatu
Yes.
in the film. So, for our listeners at home, don't picture the film Dracula, picture the film Nosferatu.
Yes.
And if you don't know what Nosferatu is,
Then grow
go
up.
look it up.
Grow up. That's my man.
Yeah, put some respect on Nosferatu's name.
But anyway, so, and you can see those anti-Jewish stereotypes.
Yeah,
in
his features
Nosferatu.
are really exaggerated in Nosferatu.
So, and that is why I bring that up, because it's for our visual learners out there that
Yeah.
there it is.
Yeah, don't depict Jews like that, please and thank you.
I'm begging.
Signed, your local Jew. The other super fun, negatively depicted ethnic group in Dracula are the Romani people. They are just kind of like casually Dracula's servants. Like, he just kidnaps Romani children and he can like control them, but he can also control the wolves in the woods and he can turn into a wolf. But yeah, the Romani were persecuted for living among animals and eating unclean meat. So Dracula being able to control both the wolves in the woods and the Romani children kind of implies that the Romani are no better than animals, which is gross. Don't do that. Similarly, the way that Harker specifically describes the Romani is incredibly imperialistic. He labels the people as barbarians, and he labels things like their boats and carriages as primitive, emphasizing the way that he perceives them as culturally inferior. So
That's so fucked up.
it is. I feel like that's kind of like your bog standard racism, though, whereas like the Jewish stuff is a little more under the surface. It's like, well, it's a Jewish allegory, but I'm just going to be out and out racist about the Romani.
Right.
Well, in that's such a thing throughout written history because of how deeply ingrained anti-Semitism is and was and continues to be. It's always like, and a lot of times unintentional, but just as bad. Like goblins, for example, that whole creature is a big Jewish stereotype. So it makes sense that that is more under the surface, whereas any other group that's about to be discriminated against, boom, here's the words, it's on the surface.
That's almost worse, though.
Oh, it totally is.
It is. I think it is worse, yeah.
Well, yeah.
They're both very
overt
bad,
racism and covert racism, both bad things.
But like at the end of the day, like if you're gonna say it and be a dick, like be a dick. Don't like hide it. If you're going to publish it.
Yeah, say it with your chest.
But like we see today, like how hard it is to fight covert racism because of things like goblins, the lizard people conspiracy theory thing. It's all stuff that people have been saying for decades and they don't know that they're repeating anti-Semitic rhetoric. And so to tell someone who doesn't think they're repeating racist things that they are being racist, the natural reaction, unfortunately, is them to say, I'm not racist. No, that's not true. Whereas if it's overt racism, they know they're doing it and they're choosing to not be educated because they've made that choice long ago. That's the difference. And that's why it's harder to fight.
It's also really easy to gaslight about covert racism because it can be like, well, I didn't think goblins were anti-Semitic. I just wanted to put them in my story because I thought they were fun. Or like the whole like goblin core trend that went around a little while ago. I was like, do you guys know what you're doing? And can you stop? But like people love to gaslight Jews about that.
And that's funny too because Crowcore was right there. Crowcore was right there and that's where I was. And that's where I am.
Yeah.
You see my trinkets. I love my trinkets. The audience at home cannot see my trinkets, but just know that they're there.
Anywho, shocking. A book from the 19th century is problematic. Who's surprised?
What? That's new information.
Okay, so let's get back to the wolf transformation thing because I really want to talk about this. That whole thing that he can transform into both a bat and a wolf, I feel like is not something that happened. Like, I feel like later versions of this decided to do away with the wolf and like have the Wolfman be his own thing. And I don't know why that is because the wolves are very prevalent in the book.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I thought the bat thing wasn't in the book. It came in the Dracula
No, the bat
movie.
thing is in the book.
I've been lied to. Everyone be
I
careful. There's
may have also been lied to. Because JJ's making a face up there that says that you might be right and I might be wrong.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the bat thing didn't happen in the book. I'm going to fact check right now so that way we can...
If I'm correct, they swapped them because it was easier to have a flying bat on strings than it was to like figure out the dog situation.
Okay, so the reason why I thought the bat was already a thing is because vampire bats are real. So bats have already been associated with vampires before this book was written. And this book really cemented most of the other vampire things, such as transforming, blood-sucking, stakes, crucifixes, garlic, sunlight, all of that stuff. Yes, the ancestral dirt, that was not a part of it before.
So yeah, I was misremembering. I think Time was also misremembering. He can shapeshift at will, his featured forms in the novel being that of a bat, a large dog, and a fog or mist. And when the moonlight is shining, he can travel as elemental dust within its rays.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
I don't
Dust?
I'm
Glitter?
saying sparkle?
Glitter?
I'm thinking about
glitter.
Like, listen, I know that we're doing this episode later
in the moonlight,
but like the speed at which the Cullens move and the fact that they sparkle, like I think that's
for everyone at home. Be wary, double check information because I was misled. I was misinformed by information I read on the internet.
Sarah, like I know you're going to continue with it, but your point is really interesting because in modern vampire stories, it's always the wolf against the vampire. They don't work together.
They're always like rivals. They're always diametrically opposed. So it's so interesting to me because I remember when I was reading, I was like, wait a second. That big wolf that jumped off the boat, that was Dracula? What?
Yeah.
Also the fog, I'm a little sad that didn't make it past the book.
That isn't more prevalent. Well, and when you said that, you know what I thought of? Santa Claus. Going down the chimney with his little nose touch and everything. Santa does give vampire, and I really do, this actually really checks out for me because 1, you only ever see him at night. 2, insanely fast. And 3, the fog.
And immortal. And has minions.
And if he travels in the moonlight, sunlight. That's how
Yeah,
he
he
gets the
can
presents
just-
there so quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and can just, as a elemental
Yeah,
dust,
because the
can
whole
go
reindeer
down.
Santa's
thing
a
was a
vampire.
leftover from pagan stuff, like Artemis and her
Yeah.
reindeer sleigh.
Right.
Interesting.
So I'm wondering too because if this is such a derailment and I'm so sorry, but I have to say this. I have to follow this train. Santa would then be like a truly like benevolent vampire.
Well, so there are nice vampires in folklore. They're not all evil.
It's mainly in Evermore where they become evil.
And his counterpart in, I think it's German mythology. Was that a Taylor Swift reference? I'm ignoring that. Krampus, though, is depicted as like a really old demon thing with horns, but that Krampus gives more like stereotypical vampire vibes.
He does eat
The
children,
naughty
yeah.
children.
He does, yeah. Or he kidnaps them and turns them into his slaves.
Which is what Dracula does.
To the Romani children.
Right, and also the vampire women in his castle and everything.
Did
like
we
that.
all just unpack the myth
all
of Santa
really starting
Claus?
to
Y'all
check
heard it
out.
first here, everybody
I
on the
think we
Witching Hour.
did.
Santa is a vampire.
I want to do some research on this. It may just be a crack theory and a bunch of coincidence, but there's
We should do
something
that
there.
like around Christmas, revisit this, like having done some research and stuff.
Yeah. Everyone watch this space. Come December, watch this space.
Y'all thought Swifties are insane? We're Santa Claus's vampires, okay? We're about to...
Yeah.
We're gonna break the internet.
My God.
Just call us Wreck-It Ralph. God, get out of here. Talk to me more about the werewolves,
Good night.
please.
Yes,
that
please,
was really
please
all
come
I
back.
had.
Please
That was
come
my
back.
entire thought, was that it's interesting that he turns into a wolf in addition to being a bat.
It is.
Also, real quick, because while I was researching this earlier, you were not with me, I was thinking about the show and the movie, What We Do in the Shadows. Specifically the show. Because one of my favorite shows ever to
Mine
exist.
too.
It's so good.
Mine too.
It's so
good.
It's so good. But
It's so good.
it is also, I think, one of the closest, not adaptations, but it follows the Dracula rules more closely than most other
lore.
adaptations because they all turn into
It
bats.
sure does.
They all, they have to take their ancestral
Ancestral
dirt
dirt.
with them when they travel, or they can't sleep. They drink blood, they fly. They can do hypnotism, which I think is a Dracula thing.
At least in the film it is.
Yeah, I think it is, because that's kind of the whole thing with Mina and Dracula. After she has some of his blood, they, like, hypnotize her to, like, get a connection. Oh, and he hypnotizes Renfield. That's how he gets into the asylum. So he can, like, hypnotize people to do his bidding. But specifically the ancestral dirt, because I feel like that's not something that shows up in a lot of adaptations.
Before that show, I had never seen it.
Yeah. Me either.
So that is really interesting. Also, the mirror thing, where they can't see themselves in mirror because of the silver backing. That, I believe, I haven't read the book, but I believe that is one of the things that the movie created. Because of the little, no one can see what I'm doing. It's the little jewelry box or something that he has in his living room. And the way, like, the two guys, this was a clip I saw. I don't know who these two guys are. But the way that they, like, figured out that he was not human or something was because they were looking at the jewelry box and it had a silver plated mirror in it. And as they were looking in it, Dracula, who was behind them having a conversation, was not in there.
That is in the book.
Okay.
As you were saying it, I remembered that happening.
I am going to find whoever told me this information, because whoever it was the same person who said the bat thing, and I'm going to get them.
I think you need
And if you're
to.
listening to this, watch out. I'm on my way.
I'm on my way.
Okay, so, but interesting, like, just kind of thinking about all of this stuff that we've talked about and then the mirror thing. I wonder if, like, Bram Stoker, like, if that's kind of a metaphor for, like, his fear of not wanting to see, like, who he is and what he believes in.
Explain.
The whole thing is clearly very problematic, right? Like, very racist, very, like, sexual in a way that, like maybe Bram Stoker had some feelings, had some tinglies for the wrong people. At least, like, the wrong people according to the Protestant church and in Ireland. And so, like, the vampire not having a reflection has more to do with, like, a desire to not have to look yourself in the mirror and take stock of who you are and what you've done.
Interesting.
Is that too deep?
Probably. We got into serious, like, literary analysis territory there, which I was not planning to do.
Dracula is largely a marginalized person and represents many marginalized groups in a bad way, but still, if we're looking at just Dracula the character as a person with agency, he's super marginalized in multiple different intersectional ways. And so I wonder if in one of those intersections, Bram Stoker saw himself and then used the rest of them to sort of cover that up.
Oh, that's
so that it
interesting.
couldn't be seen as an allegory, because he's clearly not Jewish. He was clearly Irish Protestant, right? So maybe he's going deep into, here's all the unsavory things from a Protestant perspective, and I'm one of them.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna shit on everyone else in order to not take any of the slack for it.
Right.
That's
like, look at
very
them, don't look at me.
See, in my mind, just immediately went to, like, well, Bram Stoker is secretly a homosexual Jew who got syphilis from all the gay sex he was having. But that probably didn't happen.
Perhaps. But perhaps.
Perhaps. Probably not.
You could ghost write a book about it.
Yeah.
Aren't you doing a Dracula retelling?
I am.
Is that a
Yeah,
secret?
we are. No, it's not a secret. We are.
Okay, I was gonna say, we can cut that
Empire
out.
No, we talked about it on her interview series. So yeah, it's common knowledge.
If you haven't listened to last week's episode about ghostwriting and AI,
Go do
I
that.
feel real sorry for you. You need to go listen to that.
Yeah.
And then restart this episode.
Because you'll also get the history of how Sarah, at the age of like 9 or 10, actually wrote 50 Shades of Grey as a ghostwriter.
Right, which is based off of Twilight, which wouldn't exist without Dracula.
Yeah. So really, this is just a Sarah week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
Well, Sarah
for me.
couple weeks, I guess. Yeah.
It's Sarah couple weeks. Drag
It's
name.
the Sarah show.
It is the Sarah show.
I did show up to recording today saying,
Famous third woman Sarah.
I will make sure that I feed all of this into AI generators so it starts coming out as truth.
Yes. Yeah.
perfect.
Correct.
Hey, I said when we showed up today, I felt like the main character. I was right.
Yeah.
I love being
Sarah
right.
said,
You were right.
"Get out of the way, Eve and Lilith. I am here."
Yeah.
It's my time. My time. This is my show. This is my book. I call it the Bible.
And we're going to blow this thing out of the water. Santa Claus, vampire, you're all welcome.
That is a crazy revelation to have come out of this episode.
It really is.
I'm like flabbergasted.
Yeah.
Am I gasted? It's flabbered.
Your gas is flabbered.
We're going to have to
My
ungas
gas
that
is
flabber later.
flabbered. Yeah.
Have we talked about what we like in the book? I think it's hilarious. Okay.
I think because it's a classic. I've never read it.
My note literally just says, it's a classic. I have to give it a 5 out of 5. However, I also think it's so funny. When I was reading through this summary, like the fact that Quincy is a cowboy has no bearing on anything, but he's literally just this American cowboy who lives in England for
Like, why
some
is he
reason.
there?
I don't know why he's there, but he is, and he's so iconic.
Because I thought about that when
Yeah.
you said cowboy earlier. I was like,
That there's
no.
that one of them is given like some identifying feature, and it's
Yeah.
the cowboy.
Well, the doctor is a doctor.
I wonder too if this is such a reach. I know this is false information, but I'm going to say it anyway. I wonder if making him an American cowboy was another way of separating a character from the intended audience of the novel.
Could be.
Because I'm sure he wrote this not thinking of Americans. Why would you? I don't think of British people when I do my writing. So maybe.
Maybe. I mean, Quincy does die at the end.
I am pretty bothered that I find out that a character is a cowboy, which that's how long it's been since I read this. New information to me, but he did not kill anybody with a yeehaw. It bothers
Or
me.
even like a gun.
Yeah.
Does he ride a horse?
Was there any moment of a giddy up?
I don't think so. I think
Was he wearing a Stetson?
He's just a cowboy.
As someone from Texas, I'm offended at the way that cowboys are presented in this book.
I mean, okay, to be fair.
As someone who really liked Brokeback Mountain,
I love that movie.
I'm really offended.
Yeah, no, he's just like a random like character trait. And I think that in the audiobook they even gave him like an American accent, but there's no real narrative purpose that it serves. It's just like a fun little reminder that in the late 1800s, the Wild West was
Active.
like going strong in America at that point. Like that was the culture in
Like it
America.
was Wild and West.
It was, yeah. So they were just like, well, yeah, there's just a cowboy in England for some reason. He's in this book.
He had to be crazy rich. rich.
Oh, yeah.
I can't believe that Lucy chose. Literally, I don't even remember what the third guy's deal is, because there's the doctor who runs the asylum. He's important. There's Quincy the cowboy. Obviously, you pick him. And there's the third guy, and that's the one that she chose.
Well, to be fair, Quincy died.
Well, but she didn't know he was going to die when she didn't accept his proposal.
I would say for me, what I like about this book is what it has done for the genre it basically created. Because some of my favorite media of all time is vampire stuff. Like, I mean, this is a terrible show, but True Blood, one of my faves. One of my faves. What We Do in the Shadows, great. Twilight, fantastic. Like, there's so many things that I hold dear that wouldn't exist, at least in the capacity in which they do, if it weren't for this book. Mm-hmm. With that being said, everything else about it I really hate, such as the Judaism of it all.
Yes, it could be
that's where I'm at.
Better in that aspect. But if you don't think about that, which is kind of my approach to classic literature.
Because you kind of have to.
No, yeah, like if you want to enjoy it on any level.
Because you can't enjoy it otherwise.
Okay, thank you for clocking in for the Witching Hour. To share your opinions on our opinions, you can head on over to Spellbound Publishing House's social media account. All of the links and information that you may need can be found in the show notes, and we will see you next shift.
Bye.